You're listening to The Fix with Ryan Rothstein, live from the Prop Swap studios of AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio. Prop swap that ticket and cash in while the odds have improved. Once again, here's Ryan.
All right, welcome back to The Fix. We are live in the Prop Swap studios, AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio. And we have a Victory Monday tonight with our NFL Eagles insider, John McMullen. Follow John on Twitter at JFMcMullen, PhillyVoice.com, Sports Illustrated at SI.com, and extending the play every Saturday morning right here on 1490 from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Well, John, here we are, Eagles with the big win. Plenty to get to, an injury that feels like a little bit of a loss, so let's get into it.
Yeah, I mean, well, the Rodney McLeod injury, that's devastating for this defense. He's been having, obviously he's the leader of the secondary, but he's been having a great season on top of that, and I think it's been kind of lost for a lot of reasons. And obviously everything's been focused on the offense and the quarterback issues, and understandably so, but there are other parts to this team, and Rodney was a big success, and the team expected him to step up in the absence of Malcolm Jenkins and take over that back end. He did it, and he did it successfully, and unfortunately he's done for the season, and the Eagles have to figure out how to move forward from that direction. But, yeah, I mean, even that's going to be lost, Ryan, in the glow of Jalen Hurts. And, you know, it depends how you look at this. If you don't like quarterback controversies, this was the worst performance in history. If you're just worried about putting a good quarterback on the field, hey, maybe the Eagles got something going. It's still far too early to say that, but you saw the difference. I mean, that's the same offense. I know everybody wants to say, oh, Doug didn't do this for poor Carson. No, this is the Eagles' offense. One quarterback succeeded in it. Another quarterback had more autonomy with the offense and didn't succeed with it. And that's where we are.
I'm glad you said that because I think it's that simple. And I'm not trying to completely attack Carson Wentz. I said this the other day. Like, I'm rooting for him. I would love to see him have some success and figure this thing out just from an individual standpoint. But, I mean, it was clear as day. If anything, like, no Jason Peters, and I know Jason Peters has struggled, but he went to the IR, not available yesterday in the game. There was not that much of a difference for Jalen Hurts, and it just seemed like it was a breath of fresh air for me, John, because he just kept it simple. Nothing there, tuck it and run. 4-yard gain, get out of bounds. First option isn't open, throw it away. It's like, wow, how simple it is when you're not in a frantic tizzy under center as the starting quarterback.
Yeah, and that pretty much sums it up, and that's the difference, and it was simplified, and Jalen, accepted the instructions, and that's been one of my criticisms for Carson for a while. Dating back, you can go back to Frank Reich and John DeFilippo from year one. You know, they admitted he's a hard-headed guy, and he pushes for what he wants. And sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad. When you're struggling, it's probably bad. Probably best to just take the coaching and try to move forward and at least get out of the funk. And when you're out of the funk, then you can think about becoming Peyton Manning and asking for autonomy and asking to do this and that, and essentially run the offense from the line of scrimmage. It essentially was a one-read offense and go, a lot of RPOs, a lot of mesh concepts. It's exactly what the Eagles do, and it looked better. And you bring up the offensive line. I mean, that might be the best example of all. Same offensive line, same guys, and different. We've talked about the moving parts all year, and this time it was Herbig coming in for Jason Peters. But it's not like Nate Herbig turned into an all-pro, nor did Jordan Mailata or Jack Driscoll or even Isaac Seumalo. Jason Kelsey is an all-pro. But, and Jason's been the one guy that's been there all year. But, when you talk about sacks and when you talk about quarterback hits, everybody blames the offensive line. The quarterback's got a big part of that as well. And you see, just like an offensive line can help a quarterback can help an offensive line. And Jalen Hurts did that by getting the football out on time, by when he did extend the play, either he stuck his foot in the ground and moved upfield, or he rolled and threw the football to live to play another down. So there was an example of a quarterback helping the offensive line.
That simple, at least it seems, for a week. Jalen Hurts, over 100 yards rushing, 106. And what did we talk about all last week, especially Friday night, John? Miles Sanders. And I said, who are we going to be talking about on Monday? And you said, for better or worse, Miles Sanders. Well, 2 touchdowns and over 100 yards. So talk about Miles.
Yeah, and hey, let Miles, forget what I say. Listen to what Miles said. And he admitted, and he was glowing. I have never seen, by the way, Miles Sanders in a better mood in my entire life. He's usually a very understated person, doesn't get too up, doesn't get too down. And he even said those words, I'm excited. And he called Jalen Hurts a natural leader. And he admitted his presence on the field opened up running lanes for him. And you had the 82-yard touchdown. I mean, when you talk about the 100-yard day, I mean, most of it came on the one run, and that's what Miles is able to do. He's an explosive guy. We've talked about it all season. If you get him in the open field, you're going to get those explosive type of plays. And you're able to get one. And he essentially gave the credit to Jalen Hurts for loosening up, for lack of a better word, the Saints defense. And, think about this, Ryan. New Orleans came into that game not allowing a 100-yard rusher in 55 games. 55 games. That's over 3 seasons of games. And the Eagles had 2. And you could argue they were both because of Jalen Hurts. It was his own work and his ability to open up those lanes for Miles Sanders.
Yeah, it's really amazing. And you and I, not to say we called it or anything, but we were talking literally exactly about that, what Miles Sanders said. And this is, well documented now, as you mentioned, how happy Miles Sanders was after the game, but the read option factor, and now they become a duo, and that's part of what makes the Ravens so hard to stop. I'm not calling Jalen Hurts Lamar Jackson. I'm not calling Miles Sanders Mark Ingram or anything like that, but having 2 guys in the backfield, one of them being the quarterback, that have the legitimate threat to burn you for a big gain or burn you for 100 yards in a game. Now your offense is completely different. And Carson Wentz, I think he has the ability to do that, but he just was choosing not to do that for whatever reason.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if he has the ability to be that type of quarterback. I mean, there are, you look at the Lamar Jacksons of the world, but Lamar's on a different plane even from Jalen Hurts from an athleticism standpoint, a Kyler Murray, somebody like that. The true dual-threat quarterback. I don't think Carson's that type. I think Carson's more of the, more. I shouldn't say is. I should say should be the type of quarterback that Aaron Rodgers is, Russell Wilson is. In other words, you extend plays to throw the football down the field. I don't think Carson, even though he's been successful running the football, I don't think they have similar traits in that way, but they can be similar successful quarterbacks. Well, you did bring up something about Jalen Hurts. Now, you do have to be honest about that. And one thing is, with young players, the biggest problem generally is consistency. So this is only 1 week, and there was some bad. I mean, people forget about it because you won the game. But that fumble late was awful. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson essentially dropped a pick six, and we might not be talking like this if he didn't. And again, if Drew Brees is in that game, the Saints win the game. It's as simple as that. Taysom Hill is an atrocious throwing quarterback from NFL standards. So I throw all of that in, and as you head out to Arizona and Oklahoma versus Oklahoma, Kyler Murray, Jalen Hurts, now the Cardinals have tape of Jalen Hurts at the pro level, and they've seen what the Eagles do, and it becomes more difficult. And incrementally every week, especially when you're facing teams with good defenses, it's going to be more difficult.
Yeah, that's going to be the next test, the next question that needs to be answered, hurdle, whatever you want to call it. John, what can you say about the coaching staff and Doug Peterson? Did they do anything special that you saw in this game where you need to give them some credit? Because people have been very critical of them. Like you mentioned, some people defending Wentz, and maybe Doug could have been better throughout the year. But what did Doug and the coaching staff do right to get the win? And Johnny hung up. I mean, I don't blame him. I guess he didn't like the coaching staff's game plan. I don't really know what else to say about that. We'll get John right back up. But I think that's interesting because, listen, there's been criticisms to go around for everyone, whether it's the coaching staff, whether it's players, you name it. And rightfully so. Like, I'm not going to say there shouldn't have been, but I think you have to give Doug some credit. I know the game plan was simplified. I'm just getting John back up now. But I know the game plan was simplified, but it's not just that simple. Like, you give Jalen a lot of credit for making plays and taking off with his legs, but I'm curious to get John's thoughts here as we get him back up. Yeah, John, I completely lost you for a second. So did you get the entire question? John, are you with me? Nope. All right, we're gonna keep efforting this, as they say in the biz. But the coaching staff, where do they stand now? And where does this team stand moving forward? Because I will continue to compare it, Luke, to the Ravens. And like I said before, I'm not saying they're Lamar Jackson or the running game, but I do feel that just because there's tape out there doesn't mean that you can stop it now, because Jalen Hurts is dynamic, and if Miles Sanders can continue to bring that dynamic running game to the games, it's not as simple as, well, it's on tape. It's tougher to stop than that.
Yeah. I mean, if your question is Jalen Hurts going to be as effective as Lamar Jackson? I mean, if you look at Jalen Hurts' season in Oklahoma, he was an excellent passer, right? I mean,
yeah,
he was throwing for 300 yards a game. You can make the argument, okay, the Big 12 defense sucks. Like, yes, that's true, but he did it in non-conference games. He did it on there was it was a Saturday game. I forget who they played. It was a Saturday Night Football game, and they played. It was an excellent defense. It was like a top 20 defense, and he lit them up. He threw for like 350 yards in his final season in Oklahoma. So
yeah,
the numbers with Lamar Jackson at Louisville and Jalen Hurts at Oklahoma, I mean, it's not even close. Like, Jalen Hurts is absolutely, fact, a better thrower than Lamar Jackson. So I think he's certainly a better passer. Lamar's a better runner for sure.
Yeah, of course. I mean,
but Jalen fits this offense, man. I think that the next question becomes, how long can you be a running quarterback, and I think we're seeing that with Lamar Jackson this year, where he's not being he certainly isn't as effective as he was last year. But we'll figure that out next year. If we continue to roll with Jalen this year, figure that out in 2021.
All right, so let's see. John, do you hear us?
I do. I hear Luke very well. The joys of live radio.
Yeah, gotta love it. Our first real technical difficulties with John for the Football Fix every night at 10:30. So our apologies for that, but let's get right back into it, John. So did you get my question regarding how much credit should you give to the coaching staff and Doug, and what did you see from them against the Saints?
I don't know if I would give the coaching staff credit. I do think it kind of proves that the coaching staff is not abysmal, as some have imagined. Some have kind of tried to spin it as, and the fact that they're just not doing what they should be doing with Carson Wentz. I think if this exposed anyone, it kind of exposed Carson Wentz, and it kind of absolved Doug Peterson and the rest of the offensive coaching staff a little bit. And again, we're talking a very small sample size, but you don't forget how to coach in 3 years. You don't win a Super Bowl and then become the worst coach in the history of mankind. So it never made sense from that perspective, just from a logical standpoint. But we all know when you lose, fans get emotional, and that's what was happening. And now they have to kind of come to grips and have the come to Jesus moment and say, oh, the quarterback was not playing well. And that pretty much is, if you really want to boil this down to the bare minimum, that's what this is about, because you just saw a rookie quarterback in his first professional start against the number one defense in the NFL elevate the players around him. And you saw a guy who the Eagles paid $128 million through 16 months ago, unable to do that the entire season. It's really an amazing story as far as the downfall of Carson Wentz, because he's played at a high level in the past, and he just fell off the table.
Talking with our NFL Eagles insider, John McMullen. Follow him on Twitter at JFMcMullen, PhillyVoice.com, Sports Illustrated at SI.com, and Extending the Play. John's the host every Saturday, 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. All right, John, Luke and I were talking just for a minute or two while we were getting you back into the conversation about the Ravens, and I use that comparison because I say, well, if Jalen Hurts and Miles Sanders and this rushing attack can have some sustained success, or they're legitimate as a duo, maybe it's not going to be as easy as, well, the film is out. I'm just trying to maybe be positive or see, okay, now that the film is out, how can they still have success? Maybe it's going to be easier than we thought, or harder than opponents think.
Well, I think they can have success. I mean, just because the film is out doesn't mean other teams are going to adjust. Remember, most other teams aren't as talented on the defense side of the ball as the Saints. So that's number one. So you're not facing a top, never mind number one, top 5, top 10 defense every week. Arizona is a pretty good group, so that'll be another decent test. And over, if Jalen gets to play a long period of time, he'll face good defenses, he'll face bad defenses like every other quarterback in this league. And the key is to limit bad games. And all quarterbacks have bad games. You brought up Lamar Jackson, the Ravens. He's had some of his worst games in the biggest moments in the playoffs, where he has looked terrible. This league will humble you, and it will humble Jalen Hurts at some point. It's not going to be all giggles from this point forward. But, I mean, the positive part, again, to me, is and I always talk about it, and I always use Aaron Rodgers as the number one example of elevating the guys around you, and that's, that's an intangible, and I know in the world of analytics people hate intangibles, but he elevated the players around him. And you saw it. Everybody saw it. And explain it how you want to, Carson Wentz has not been able to do that this season. And that's why the Eagles are going on this reclamation project in the offseason. And they'll hit Control-Alt-Delete then. But for now, Jalen Hurts is playing himself into the conversation. And if he finishes this season, if they win out, I got to tell you, all they need, guys, is for Washington to lose one of the next two games. If the Eagles win out, they're probably going to win this division. And then you can just imagine the scenario from there, a home playoff game with Jalen Hurts. And you think Carson Wentz's psyche has been affected now? Imagine it after that.
Yeah, I don't even want to imagine it. The Eagles, plus 600, 6-1 right now to win the NFC East. So, John, if you have to put a probability on it, it's only based off of one game. Do you think that they have a legitimate shot at doing it? Is it a long shot? I mean, this division is so bad, I guess you can't say it's a long shot, right? I think John got all choked up again. John, you with me? I hear him rumbling. John? Yeah, he's done. All right. Well, hey. We'll get more info with John maybe a little bit later. If not, we'll have an extended segment tomorrow. And John joins us every single night for about 30 minutes, commercial free. We only have a couple minutes left in this hour anyway. But I'll ask you, Luke, and this could be related to prop swap. Washington, the football team right now, minus 305 to win the NFC East. The Giants, 4-1. Then the Eagles at 6-1. Is there anything there for you? I mean, I understand the division stinks, and if you say I wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole, I would say that makes sense.
No, I like to find value, and the Eagles being 6-1, that's interesting. We play Washington in the last game of the season, so you figure you can pick up, 2 games there. And obviously the Birds have Arizona next week, and then the Cowboys. Of those 3 games, I mean, this team could easily go 3-0. I thought the Cardinals were an excellent team this year. That's probably the team I was the most wrong about in this year's NFL season. So they're beatable.
Yeah,
the Eagles can certainly beat the Cardinals this weekend. Certainly this weekend, because they're trending in the wrong direction as Arizona. Maybe 5 or 6 weeks ago they were kind of peaking, so wouldn't have wanted to play them then. But now that we're playing them at this valley for the Arizona Cardinals, it's a good place to be.
Yeah, and we'll see what the Eagles are going to be able to do here the rest of the way. Rodney McLeod is done for the season, and he's had a really strong year back at safety. Torn ACL, so the Eagles get a win. Everyone's happy today, Victory Monday, but certainly another significant loss for your Philadelphia Eagles. No McLeod the rest of the way, so we'll see how the Eagles are going to be able to make up for that. Some other stories. I think Jalen Mills has been solid throughout the year right now. He's been a guy that's been able to step up and play safety when the team has needed. Say what you want about how strong he is back there. He's been able to play pretty much anywhere in the secondary. And Doug Peterson mentioned that it takes a village for that type of win that the Eagles had over the Saints. And Jalen Hurts, of course, was the star of that village, the leader of that village. But there was a lot of other stars, I think, as well. And Doug talked about the glue of the village against the Saints was D-back Jalen Mills. He only had 2 tackles, but he started at his safety position, and he was just steady. And cornerback Avonte Maddox, and then safety Rodney McLeod, and then corner Darius Slay, all dealing with injuries. Mills really had to pick it up back there, be a leader. So this team has fight, and this is not something new with the Eagles. You felt like this year, though, I don't know if they have the fight in them. But all it takes is a little spark, a little confidence boost in a division that's completely wide open. And here they are. Can they win out? Can Washington stumble? I think both are very realistic, like Luke said. So sorry again out there to the issues with Johnny Mack. We still got a good conversation in with him, and we'll be right back at it again tomorrow night at 10:30 for your football fix. 1 hour down, 2 hours to go, live in the Prop Swap studios, taking a break. When we come back at 11, Luke and I are going to get into the futures market from a Prop Swap point of view, maybe some college basketball talk, and how you can utilize Prop Swap. Stay with us, AM 1490, Sports Betting Radio.